Hello, good to be with you again. Welcome to the year of 2022 and our didactic number 4. I realized it had been a little over a month, since I have sent a video, and so I hope your Christmas, holidays, and your New Year celebrations were wonderful, and even in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And I hope and pray that this new year is starting off good for you. And if it hasn't, may the Lord have mercy and it get better. I also hope that you're staying well and encouraged and relying on God's strength and power to live and do ministry every day. I know we all hope and pray in every country around the world that the coronavirus will be mitigated, or at least that we can obtain herd immunity to contain community spread. Many of you there have had COVID or known people that have been sick with COVID. And Pastor Flint and I pray for you and the people there. We pray for healing, and we also ask our church to pray. We still have many Filipino relationships and stay in contact, and so we hear prayer requests. So I just wanted you to know that. Tonight I'm going to talk about probably a little bit more heavier topic about the end of life issues as related to pastoral care and chaplain ministry. I will mostly focus on the needs of dying persons, their families, and sometimes hospital staff, as well as maybe this time or next time we can talk about rituals, prayers for the dying. So, Chaplain Pastor Nato, let's keep that in mind. He keeps me on track. Once again, I want to emphasize that I am not in your culture, so your job will be to modify and contextualize what I am teaching. Here in the States, we have resources that maybe Filipinos don't have there, such as medical insurance, lots of equipment, medical equipment and scans, and the highest technology, lots of life support. And the Western mentality that we must do everything to keep someone alive. I think in recent years, doctors that are going through training in med school, they are hopefully being taught more about death and dying and the holistic spirituality of the dying process. And we know in the long run that doctors and nurses do the work of treating patients, but God does the healing. So we keep that in mind. But when I lived in the Philippines, I learned that death in your culture was a lot more natural part of life, and that your country did not have as many resources and tests and drugs and procedures, especially outside of your larger cities or metro areas. So it's important to know, as a lay minister, as a clergy person, as a chaplain, how to handle death and what pastoral care means in that situation. Now, I will be specifically talking about people that are dying either with terminal illness, or they have contracted a disease or illness and maybe they don't last very long in that. Maybe they have some kind of unexpected accident and the doctors have done everything they can, but there is a time period where they are aware that they are still alive, and they may or may not know that their condition is terminal. That is something in your culture that I am not sure about how you handle that, but over here we have what we call palliative care or comfort care. Also, even separate from that is hospice, and you may be familiar with hospice. It's a holistic support for dying people, dying patients. So I don't know how prevalent it is over there, but anyway, even though we know that death is a part of our earthly life and existence, every human being has dignity and worth, and we must always keep that in mind. Every human being has dignity and worth. Every person has personal human needs at the end of life. So for the patient and their loved ones, there is what I call a letting go journey. And it happens for the patient, especially if they're conscious and aware and communicating. And it's a process, it's a journey for loved ones and family. Douglas Steer called this, quote, little deaths, this letting go process. So it's a relinquishing, it's a giving up, a letting go, a detaching in a way, while all at the same time accepting life that is still there. So it's a paradox, and what the person still has. Sometimes terminal illness can go as long as 6 months, and so here in the States, sometimes when people get put in hospice, it might only be for a week. So every situation, every person in their dying process is unique and different. I wanted to also share something regarding the uniqueness of the dying process. There is a saying that goes like this: we bring to our dying the resources of our living. And so we need to respect individuals' rights to complete their life in ways that are meaningful to them. Now, once again, your culture is a group identity culture. Here in the States, it's more individual self-actualization culture. And we do experience groupness and community, and we think about each other in that. But it has become important through legal paperwork called the power of attorney for healthcare. And a power of attorney for a person is the one who's going to handle all legal and business affairs for that person. Well, the power of attorney for healthcare is the person who will share to the medical staff what that person wanted should the patient become unconscious, not able to mentally process anymore and make decisions. So here in the States, we have power of attorney for healthcare agent. And that's a person, usually a family member, that will speak for the person when the person can no longer communicate or make decisions because of their decline. But it's important, I would imagine, no matter what culture, what country, that if we're going to respect the dignity and worth of an individual, that we would want to respect their rights of how they die and what they need. And then as we do that, we can also, as a chaplain, be a liaison, a person that's helping mediate between the patient and the family. I know I do here in my chaplain work, by helping the family ask questions, the right questions to a dying person, end of life, and maybe the patient. But questions like, how can I help right now? What is this like for you? I don't know if in your culture you would be that direct, but somehow facilitating the patient to be able to express their feelings about what it's like. Questions like, what worries you the most? What are your concerns? So not only can you ask the patient, but you can ask the family. Is there anyone you especially want to see right now? Is there anyone you especially want to talk to? This is very, very important, especially for any unresolved issues in relationships or need for reconciliation or forgiveness. And so asking the patient and helping facilitate that is what chaplains can do, and we do here in the States. And I have a hard time remembering, even as long as I've done chaplain work, that it's okay to say in very hard, tragic, difficult, very sad situations, when the patient is talking and venting and sharing a lot, or a family member, and you just feel such empathy and compassion and sadness, I have to remember myself that tears are okay to share with them, or simply saying, I hear you, and I don't know what to say. I feel sadness. So those are things that because we don't have to know what to do and say all the time. So it's okay to say, I'm here. Tell me how I can help you. We as chaplains here encourage family members in the hospital when the patient is on hospice or comfort care. We encourage them to reminisce with their loved ones about memories and cherished values and family values and their life review of their story, their accomplishments, and other legacies that the patient, the person, will be leaving with family and loved ones and friends. And to share that while the patient is conscious is very powerful, very healing, and a way to close, help close this earthly life with that patient. Also, sometimes there are some unhealthy beliefs in people that I am dying because I'm a sinner and I am not forgiven, or I'm being punished. So sometimes chaplains can, help people understand how God does operate in the world. So, and help them process and talk out loud that God never wants to inflict suffering or death on anyone, because God is not a punishing God. God is a forgiving God, a God of grace and mercy. And sometimes our cultural, historical, religious values will sometimes trying to make meaning out of suffering or evil or death. And even your indigenous cultures, tribal cultures will equate cause and effect. And so it's important to have ministers, chaplains, people that can say, no, we don't understand why, but, and other than death is a part of life, our life here on earth, but, no, you're not being punished. You are a sinner that's forgiven by God. If they keep emphasizing, I'm bad and this is my punishment. So just trying to check out different people's unhealthy beliefs. And I have a list of things that are concerns of usually terminally ill people. But at the top of the list is we do not treat people as dying persons and start isolating them and alienating them. And being a relationship-oriented culture like you are, I'm sure that you don't do that or very often. But I had a situation last week with a patient in my hospital that died from alcoholism, 57. She had done a lot of bad things in her life, and she said to me, I did it to myself. But basically she had no family. She was estranged from her children. I believe she was widowed at an early age. She didn't have friends that came to visit. It was very sad, and she ended up dying in the hospital. And I went to see her on Tuesday of last week, and I walked in, and no one was in the room, and she had died. She had passed alone. And my heart broke. I'm glad I got the opportunity the Friday before that Tuesday to share with her about God's love and forgiveness, and that she was precious in God's eyes, and that if she believed and trusted in Him, that she would be with him and that she was worthy and lovable. So I'm glad I hold on to that. But again, we don't classify people as, oh, this person is dying, so we don't have to pay as much attention, but we don't want to isolate or leave them alone. No one but God knows the moment of death, but we help patients and others live in the present moment, knowing in a terminal illness that death will come, but as Christians, we know that God will walk us through the door on the other side of this life. So we're there with people to remind them of that, and family and loved ones. So what do chaplains do? What do we need to practice? What do we need to learn? We need to keep gaining insights on the needs of the dying. And this is more I could do on this subject. And maybe if there is a need, I'll do some more video teaching. But to keep collecting and learning and remembering the needs of the dying people, particularly in your culture. We keep asking God's Spirit to minister comfort and reassurance through us as ministers, as chaplains, to the patient and the family. And we keep an understanding heart and a spirit that is sensitive, and a calm spirit and calm mind. And most of all, our emphasis in pastoral care is always presence. Our presence, because Jesus' Spirit lives inside of us, our presence is God's incarnation to that person. And so presence is very, very important. So the list, if you want to make this list, these are some concerns. Early on, when before the very end of the dying process, patients deal with losses. It might be loss of independence, loss of decision making, loss of mobility, loss of job, loss of relationships, lots of griefs, little deaths along the way. But keep that in mind, because loss, we lose something, it is a grief. So another thing is the fear of the unknown. I worked as a hospice chaplain before we went to the Philippines, and I learned a lot about living and dying by working on a team with hospice nurses, doctors, social workers, and they taught me that there are three main important issues with dying people. One is the fear of the unknown. What will the dying process be like? What will I feel pain? What will it be like? The second one is what happens after death. And I mean, almost every person thinks about this, whether or not they are a believer or not. The third thing is, and a big one, is the separation from family, loved ones, friends here on earth, and concerned about what will happen to them after I die, after the person dies. So the dying process, what will it feel like? What will it be like? Secondly, what happens after death, the future. And third, and a big one, is separation from earthly relationships, family especially. So fear of the unknown is number 2. Number 3 is dignity of human worth. When someone is got a disease, or they've been very injured in an accident, or whatever that might be, there is a loss of identity, and therefore worth, because I'm no longer useful, I'm no longer look the same, those kind of issues. So dignity of human worth. And of course I've mentioned isolation, the sense of, okay, I'm slowly dying, I'm quickly dying, but a sense of alienation, isolation. And again, I don't know what it's like in your culture there, but here it can be. And then early on, with end of life or terminally ill, is financial needs. And for self, for family, that's another big one. Being able to talk about it, and find resources or help. And the chaplain, again, can be a mediator with social workers or other staff, or help family find resources. I know we do here in the States a lot. We work with other disciplines and resources. And here, like I said, in Western mentality, there's this big thing of keep person alive, at all costs. I can't deal with death. But is the right to die? We talk about human rights, but I don't know there. But given that person's respect and human worth and dignity, they have a right to not be kept alive on life support, for example. Pain control. A lot of the patients I see are concerned about pain control and keeping pain under management, where they can not suffer not suffer out of control with pain. Quality of life. Whether you're at the front end of a terminal illness or you're at the end, the quality of life. And there's a quote that says, dying is the living that occurs at the end. When life is, death is not. When death is, we are not. So there is living even in the dying. So just reflect and meditate on that, and maybe talk about that among yourselves. And important is unfinished business, whether that be relationships estranged, or unfulfilled expectations, something that person didn't get accomplished or didn't do that they wanted to do, especially if a person is dying young in life. So unfinished business, unresolved issues. A person has the right to die in peace. And part of that for the patient, whether they're a believer or not, is that they bring closure to their life as much as possible. So dying in peace. And spiritually, we know what that means. Dying with forgiveness and assurance of that from God, and dying with the peace of Christ, and knowing that knowing that the peace, that knowing that their family is going to be okay. So important to die with resolve. And then, as I've mentioned, sometimes physical appearance or immobility are issues for people that are in hospice or, have a longer than a week to live. Excuse me. That they want to talk about it and they want help with that. So these are the things. Just a moment. Excuse me. I got to get this little tickle out of my throat. Some of you may know that I've gotten over bronchitis, but the weather here is so up and down that we get a lot of what we call post-nasal drip, and so sometimes it gets kind of choked in there. My apologies. You have to be comfortable. This is the last thing that I will impart to you. We have to be comfortable with our own mortality to help people who are dying. And that is ongoing for me. I have been around a lot of dying people through the years. I've been a chaplain since 1989, if that tells you anything. And lots of death in our church here in the States, family that has died, hospital work, a lot of situations, and even experiencing death with Filipino friends and colleagues there when we were there at the seminary. And I think it is a journey in itself for chaplains, pastoral caregivers, to always be processing what it would be like if we were terminally ill or dying. The only thing that would be not included in that would be sudden death, where you're not, you just die quickly, suddenly. And it's hard. I mean, even though I'm a Christian, I'm a minister, a pastor, I still, humanly, I know that I'm going to be with Christ forever, and to live, is one thing with Christ, but to die is gain, the scriptures say. And I'm really confident and assured and at peace with that. But my issue is still leaving family and the separation and saying goodbye. And sometimes, honestly, I think about, God, I wonder how I will die. What will be the cause of my earthly death? And so I guess I'm encouraging you in your own way, in your culture context, to think about how can you get more comfortable with dying and the dying process and your own mortality. So for me, it's been an ongoing process. I would like to know some of your discussion, what you think about all of this content tonight, and have some feedback. So feel free again to text me, video call, whatever you'd like to do. We are 14 hours difference, but I work it out a lot from here to the Philippines. So anyway, you're not there in person, you're watching this by video, but pause it, talk with someone, talk with Chaplain Nato in your group sessions. But I would be interested in hearing your reflections, your feedback. And so until next time, mag-ingat kayo, and God bless you and your families, your ministry, your learning. We pray for you, and we will see you next time. Okay, paalam. Bye-bye.